So in this video, I'll continue to talk about hormones and reproduction. I just made a video before this that basically introduces this chapter, talking about things like karyotype, what kind of what gametes are, and where are they produced and where are they from, what they do, and all. I just started to basically introduce this, but in this video, I'll go now into specifically to talk about male hormones and reproduction, and then female hormones and reproduction. And then for the next video, I'll talk about the menstrual cycle because that's a big process that needs its own video. So just follow along and see if you understand everything. So, like we said in my previous video, the testes are responsible for making your sperm, right? This is the male gamete, so the male sex cell. What else can your testes do? We know it can cause sexual development, as we saw in the previous video, but what specific hormone is made by the testes that causes sexual development? Because remember, hormones are things that cause change in your body or cause action to take place. So it can't, it, something needs to be made in order to cause you to develop, right? So what is this thing called? You may have heard of it, and it's called testosterone. So in my videos, all the hormones I like to put in this kind of oval shape. So if you see them, just know it's a hormone. So it makes testosterone. So what does testosterone do? In what way does it help you develop before you are born? So think about it, when the egg and the sperm meet, and now you're trying to make a human being, testosterone has to be made in order to make a male, right? So you can think of before you are born, testosterone, the hormone, allows you to develop male genitalia, because up until you're born, you're pretty much the same as a female, except for the fact that you have different genitalia. They all look the same. Sometimes you can't even tell there's a difference. And that's true because this testosterone will cause you to be distinguished from a female by having genitalia, okay? But we know a lot of other things change due to testosterone, and this is more part of teenagers, right? So in teenagers, what do you think the role of testosterone plays? You can think of many obvious things, like you grow in height, you get stronger, you get hairy, right? All of these things are true. There are many more, obviously, than just this, but these are some basic ones that are pretty important. Other than that, you also make much more sperm than when you were younger, because now you're able to reproduce. So your sperm count increases a lot. Other ones include enlargement of your genitalia. That's true. Stimulant. So we talked about this one already. That's the stimulant of production of sperm. Deepening of the voice. And lastly, it affects your behavior associated with sex drive. So this basically just means this causes you to become horny, right? That's pretty much what that sentence means. So that's it for what happens in a man with this hormone. That's the purpose of testosterone before you are born, when you're very young, and when you're a teenager. That's where the differences occur. Now, let's go to female. There's a few more hormones in female than a male. It's a bit more complicated, but just try and stick with me. It shouldn't be too difficult if you just follow along. So now we have the picture of the female here, right? So the difference in the female is that it produces hormones from two places. The man only produces from the testes, but the female produces from a part in the brain called the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland. And also the ovaries. We know the ovaries. Because in the ovaries it makes the egg cells. Like the man makes sperm, the woman makes eggs. But like the man makes testosterone, the woman makes other hormones that will cause sexual development of a female. In the brain, it makes other hormones, which are responsible, which you'll see later, it's responsible for the menstrual cycle. It helps in the menstrual cycle. And so let's just take a look at the hormones. Let's see if you can match them up. So here are the four hormones. Can you match them up to where they belong? I made it a bit easy. The green ones go to the same branch of arrows, and the yellow ones go to the other same branch of arrows. So estrogen and progesterone is made here. Now, obviously, LH and FSH will be made here. You can remember this. I remember this because I remember the man. The man only makes one hormone, testosterone. And all of these words end kind of the same. Progesterone and estrogen, they're longer words. So I remember that these two hormones are made in the woman private area, just like Testosterone, another long word, is made in the male genitalia. So these two are made here, these ones. They're abbreviations for, this one is an abbreviation for luteinizing hormone. This one is a abbreviation for follicle stimulating hormone. And we'll talk about their functions and everything in detail later on, but we'll just basically introduce what they do now. So let's first go to estrogen and progesterone. We just went over what testosterone does in a man. So what would you think logically does estrogen and progesterone do in terms of sexual development? Remember, these two hormones have many functions. They help in sexual development, which is what we're going to talk about now, but they also help in the menstrual cycle, which we'll see later on. So just in terms of sexual development, what does it do before you are born? So in a man, remember, it makes development of the genitalia. So in a female, it would cause development of their genitalia. So now they're distinguished from men. Now, in a teenage girl, though, what would change? What things do you think change when a teen girl reaches puberty? So let's take a look at it. So we know, firstly, widening of the hips. And many of you might know this already, but do you know why? So the reasoning is because of this allows them to better carry a baby when they get pregnant, because they literally have more space, they are wider. So this widening of the hips helps for the carrying of the baby process, which doesn't happen in a man. Also the menstrual cycle, so pretty much the period cycle, that happens, which is the whole next thing we're going to talk about in the next video. And growth of body hair, yeah, many people might think women don't grow extra hair when they have puberty, but they do just like men. It's a natural process. And development of the breasts. And there's many other things that happen, but these are the key ones that everyone should know about. This is your hair growing there. So this is in terms of sexual development, and that's due to these two hormones. Now, do you know what these two hormones do, LH and FSH? I like to remember what this one does based on its name, follicle stimulating hormone. So it kind of stimulates the follicle to develop. But you might not understand that. You might not understand what that means if you don't know what the follicle is. So the follicle is basically the capsule, the thing that's holding the egg. So remember, the egg has to be made, otherwise fertilization can't happen. So the follicle is the thing that's holding the egg. So FSH is basically causing the development of the follicle. So if the follicle can develop, it will make the egg, because the egg is inside of it. So it will cause the egg to develop. So that's what this one does. So it causes the egg to start being made, basically. And LH, I think of it as like L to let go. So it's the let go hormone. Let go hormone, because once one FSH goes first, so once the follicle makes the egg and it's ready to be released, LH is the hormone that will cause it to be released. What I mean is, remember in our last video, here we have the female part, and if the egg is here, this is where FSH is, this is where the egg is made due to FSH. If it's finished being made, LH will cause the egg to come out now. That's basically their difference. That's basically their function. So here, just so if you want to summarize this, so LH causes the immature follicle to develop. No, I mean, this is not right. Swap them around, because one is FSH. So it causes the immature follicle to develop, and I encourage you to remember the name, the follicle stimulating hormone. So you can think it's something to do with the follicle. Now, LH has two functions. It stimulates the follicle to release the egg, like we just said, but it also causes the development of the corpus luteum. Don't worry too much about this word. In my next video, I will explain this in detail. But if you want to know something just for now, the corpus luteum is basically the follicle without the egg. So at first, the follicle has the egg in, but then it's released. So as soon as that is released, now it's a corpus luteum. So it's basically, corpus luteum is basically the follicle without the egg. So it will cause the development of the corpus luteum, because the corpus luteum is now going to like degenerate. It's going to like remake itself. So LH is part of that. It's going to remake itself so that it is a follicle again. Because right now it's like all broken and stuff because it released the egg. So it will cause it to remake itself and to redevelop itself to become a follicle again. So I hope you understood everything in this video. I'm covering everything in detail, so no worry about reading extra material and everything. If you watch these videos, I legit cover everything in deep details. No reason why you can't get sixes or sevens in the IB, and even in other courses like the A levels, you can do get good grades. I'm covering everything to a very deep detail. So next time, um, we'll talk about the menstrual cycle. Um, yeah.